Gode morgen, gode dag. You see, I am limping a little. I had a complicated leg fracture, but I hope I'm still clear in my head. And Hilversum revokes old memories. I grew up as a farm boy in the Eifel, in the western part of Germany, not so far from the Netherlands. And at that time, we listened to 2 private radio stations. There were only 2 private stations in Europe. One was Radio Luxembourg, the predecessor of RTL, and the other one was Hilversum. So I'm back in Hilversum after 60 years or so. Our topic today, the power of pricing, change, value, profit, inflation. So let me say a word about change. We have seen more changes in pricing in the last 20 years than in the 2000 years before. And I illustrate that through Socrates. Who was Socrates? The famous Greek philosopher who lived 2,500 years ago. And he said, the value of a product does not come from ownership, but from the actual use of the product. So you don't need a car, you don't need a scooter. You have to use it to get value. We call that value in use. So it's a very old idea, and that is the mother of the sharing economy. Why was this idea not implemented earlier, only in the last few years? Because we didn't have the technology. If you sell a car or a scooter, it's one transaction. You sell the scooter for 1,000 euros. If you sell it by the minute, it's thousands of transactions. And so this pricing system, sharing economy, could only be handled through our modern technology. It was technically impossible to do it before. The other point is that we have to bring lots of suppliers and demanders together to coordinate them in time, again, only possible with the modern technology. But I start with a much simpler thing. There are only 3 profit drivers, because profit equals price times volume minus cost. So, which one is the most effective? How can we really increase profit? If we assume that we can increase price by 1% or volume by 1% or reduce cost by 1% without anything changing, how does that affect profit? For a typical product or service case, this 1% price increase would mean a 10% profit increase. It's a very simple calculation. For costs, it would mean a 6% increase, and for volume, only a 4% increase of profit. So the so-called profit multipliers, or for the economists among you, that would be the profit elasticity of price. The profit multiplier of price is 10 times in percentage terms we get in profit. For cost, it's 6, for volume, it's 4. Why is it so low for volume? If volume increases, marginal cost increase. That's the definition of marginal cost. If price increases without loss, we have no change in cost. It's a fundamental difference. So that's first simple lesson. Price is the most effective profit driver. Its profit multiplier is 10, for costs it's 6, and for volume it's only 4. Of course, these are averages, rough numbers, from case to case, that is different, so you have to check that. But be aware, there's a fundamental difference in the profit effect of price, cost, and volume. Fundamental difference. Now, pricing, what is the most important aspect of pricing? And here, I have an evergreen answer. It's value, or more precisely, value to customer, or even more precisely, perceived value to customer. Very, very simple and fundamental. And of course, that is a very old wisdom. Who speaks Latin? Do you still learn Latin in school? I learned it, but I had forgotten it. You speak Latin. So the word, yeah, but you know the word for price is pretium, and for value it's also pretium. The Romans had the same word for price and value. So this is the fundamental equation of pricing, that price and value must be balanced. There are the two sides of the coin. If you take that lesson home today, it's worth attending this conference. That you always balance price and value, or perceived value. So this is the most fundamental equation of pricing, because willingness to pay is only a mirror of the perceived value. If people perceive a higher value, they are willing, very important in inflation. How can you raise your price? So this means that pricing should not be primarily concerned about the price as such, but about the value of the product or service you are offering. So understanding, creating, communicating value is a real challenge of pricing. Lesson 2, again, very simple. The most important aspect of pricing is value. Pretium equals value equals price is the fundamental equation in pricing. Take home these few simple things, and you have, it's all obvious, it's substantial, but really bringing it to the point is the message here. So the challenges, value delivery on the one side, and value monetization, a different word for pricing. How do we get back the value we need to be profitable and to survive? And here we see a couple of examples, classical examples you could say, which show what value to value creates. Simple product like a razor blade. This is the history of the razor blades of Gillette, from 63 cents to 1.87 with the latest fusion. And that translates into huge differences, factor of 10, in the amounts we extract in value we monetize. For the fusion, they get 25 euros per year from all of us who use the fusion. And I would say that practically all, we can make a test. Who, if you are a wet shaver or shave yourself, who uses this product? Oh, you see, market share 60%. First, they delivered value by innovation. They also communicate, they put a lot of money into the communication, and then they monetize the value. Apple iPhone compared to Samsung. Both are iPhones, but the Apple costs about 2 to 3 times more than the Samsung or the Huawei phone. And if we relate that to inflation, we can again make a test. Let's assume that Apple raises the price of the iPhone We are now at number 14, I think, by 10%. Who has an iPhone today and would still buy an iPhone if it's 10% more expensive? Only 3? No, there are some more. Yeah. Probably there are not that many people here who have Xiaomi or Huawei phones, smartphones. If they raise the price by 10%, my guess is that they would lose 20 or 30% of their customers. Again, for the economists, their price elasticity would be about 2. Volume loss is twice the increase in price. For Apple, it would be 0.3, difference by a factor. That leads us to pricing power, which we will discuss in a minute. But now you think, yeah, iPhone is such an extreme example. Let's look at very mundane products. Who knows Wirt? Is anybody here knows Wirt? Yeah, what do they sell? Screws, nuts, simple products. The most simple products you can think of. And I asked a Schreiner, a cabinet maker, I saw that he used Wirt. I said, but the Wirt products are more expensive than the other ones. Why do you use Wirt? And he said, we work nationwide in Germany, and wherever we are, there's a Wirt branch within 5 or 10 kilometers. That's a high value for me, so I pay more. And the Wirt products are actually more expensive if you buy an electric drill machine, or more expensive than the original Bosch or whatever it is. Here the value comes obviously from the availability, easy accessibility, and people are willing to pay more. Not consumers in this case, but Handwerker. What does value do? As the iPhone case illustrated, it creates pricing power. And Warren Buffett said, the single most important aspect of evaluating a business is pricing power. Does a business have the power to set the prices, to increase the prices so that they earn a decent profit? Pricing power. And pricing power differs so much. Here's an extreme example. This shows the price developments for cars, the blue upper curve, and the price development for the suppliers. If you're an automotive supplier, you usually have very little pricing power vis-à-vis the automobile manufacturers, the big guys, Volkswagen or Toyota or whoever it is. So the automotive industry was able to increase its prices over this period 16%, the suppliers only 3%. And the difference is the pricing power. The suppliers are dependent, they need the order from the big guys, whereas the end product manufacturers, they have brands, marketing, preferences with their consumers. So think about what is our pricing power. And in our global studies at Simon Kucher, only about 1/3 of the companies say they have real pricing power. The others are exposed, so the pressure have little freedom, latitude in adjusting the price. And of course, that is most critical under our inflationary conditions we have today. Here is a case, and you can be proud of this case, of extreme pricing power. And the product is also extreme, extreme ultraviolet lithography, ASML, now the most valuable company in Europe. And what that actually is what I call a business ecosystem. And I show you two components from two key players, Trumpf and Zeiss, in this system. This is a Trumpf laser amplifier. It has a peak performance of 20 gigawatts and creates a temperature of 220,000 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine that? What temperature is that on the ship? Is there anybody from ASML here? Yeah, they are busy, probably. This laser shoots 50,000 tint drops per second, per second, not per hour, on the ship, 50,000 tint drops, and has 450,000 components. And this part of the ASML machine is even less complex than the ZEISS optical system. The ZEISS system reduces the distance from 193 to 13 nanometers. Nanometer is 1, do you say milliard in Dutch? Yeah, 1 milliards, 1 billionth of a meter. So rather small. It extends Moore's law by more than 10 years. And on one fingertip, it positions 56 Milliarden Transistoren. That's a very complicated system of mirrors which magnify. If you extend these mirrors to the size of Germany, the deviation would be 1 millimeter. If you extend it to the size of Holland, it would be 0.2 millimeters. Can you imagine that? Extreme value, I call that deep technology, because we always admire the smartphones and the things we know. We don't know what's going on in the value chain. Just to have, you make one guess, Bas, you make that guess. How many suppliers does Apple have in Germany? In Germany. I don't know the number for the Netherlands, but it's probably proportional. 5? 5 suppliers. All kinds of suppliers. Machines, ships, software, 5. Anybody has a different idea? 767. 767 suppliers of Apple are in Germany. And you know a few of them. Henkel is one for adhesives for glues, or Beiersdorf. But all the others are what I call hidden champions. And here we talk about this kind of extreme value, like in the ASML case. How does this value come about? Of course, by research and development, by innovation. And in our studies, we find that innovation, new concepts, new products, are the most important driver of value. So I started with price, now I am at innovation, and that is where we have to be strong, be it in consumer innovation, be it in business to be it in services. But also very important, changing the way customers think about pricing and value. Here we talk about the perception. The first is the technical side, and here it's equally decisive. For instance, when we think of new heating systems, replacing gas heatings by heat pumps, yeah, we have to communicate the advantages. And I am a big fan of communicating hard, data-driven advantages and not only flamboyant or whatever it is. And then the third point, equally interesting, changing mindset and confidence in our ability to implement higher prices. Here I talk of a leadership challenge, especially for our sales force, our salespeople. They have a very tough life under inflation. When we had this period of stable prices, only 2% per year over 3 decades practically, our salespeople went to the customer once per year and asked for a modest price increase. Now they have to go 6 times, 8 times, and they are really, I talked to a guy from the paper industry recently, he said, even our most experienced salespeople are close to a nervous breakdown because they are under so much pressure. So this is equally important, creating the product's innovation, communicating, perhaps changing the perception of our customers, and creating the self-confidence of our people to really sell value and not use the price as the main selling instrument. Lesson 3, understand, create, communicate value. When you deliver higher value through innovation, make sure you fully monetize that. That is more the communication, the sales side. And I've, especially with many engineers, I've made the experience over years, they think if you make a good product, it sells itself. No, you still have to invest a lot of effort to really make the technical value into a perceived value. Now we come to the higher art of pricing, that's price differentiation across everything, across customers, across values, across space and time. Werner Harnisch mentioned one of the most obvious areas, dynamic pricing, that prices change. If you have changing supply and demand conditions, prices have to be adjusted. But that's only one very important aspect, and I show you a couple of examples here from different industries. What is behind that? If we look at the profit potential in the market, it's always a triangle. We have here the price on the horizontal axis, the sales volume on the vertical axis, and then the price response or demand curve, or however you call this thing. It's always something similar to a triangle. If you have only one price, what are you doing? You are cutting out a rectangle out of the triangle. Geometrically, that's clear. If you have only one price, you cut out a rectangle. You still worry about this? It's very simple. Here, we see it. With one price, you can only cut a rectangle out of a triangle. So you leave a lot of money. There are people who are willing to pay more, and people who don't buy the product at this uniform price, who would buy it at a lower price. So the challenge is to get from rectangle to triangle. That's the challenge of price differentiation, of the higher art of pricing. And how do companies do that? Yeah, by charging different prices in different situations, be it time, be it location. Here you see the price difference between the lowest price and the highest price for a 0.33 liter can of Coca-Cola is by a factor of more than 5. Not 5%, 500%. Because you can separate. Somebody is in a minibar in a hotel room, he doesn't go to the supermarket to buy a can of Coca-Cola. And of course, you can use external conditions. This was a test which Coca-Cola made in Japan, that they changed the price according to the temperature. The value, if it's hot, is higher than if it's cold. People are more thirsty. That got public before it was implemented, and they had to abandon this plan. Airlines, it's obvious, you know today that if you ask your neighbor in the seat, he maybe have paid double or half the price. Ideally, as the CEO of American Airlines said, we would have a different price for each seat, depending on when it was booked, whether it's a business or private traveler. Of course, we never achieve that we can extract the individual willingness to pay, but that is the way to go. And here is a case from a cinema chain in the US. They had a uniform price. So you see, that's a rectangle they cut out. We introduced a scheme where, with a card where the first visit was more expensive than the second and third within a month. And this is the surface we cut out. 37% higher in profit, 22% more customers. So higher price and higher volume. But that cannot be achieved by simply raising or increasing price. You need more complex systems. Very interesting new approach is that you make your price dependent on the value you deliver. And here's Enercon, the technology leader in wind power, where the price of the service contract depends on the actual yield of the wind park. And that's a 12-year contract, and the investors are very happy with this contract. 90% sign it, because if the yield is higher, they pay more, they can afford it. If the yield is lower, they have to pay less. And we do that also in consulting, that we have more contracts where our fee depends on the actual result over the next 1 or 3 years. So you share some of the entrepreneurial risk by these pricing systems. Then, typically, for products, we have a one-dimensional price. A pound of coffee costs €5 or so. Can we introduce multi-dimensional prices? And here I show you 2 examples. One is for industrial gases, where we have a price for the cylinder per day and a price for the gas per kilo. So you're moving in a 2-dimensional price space, and that creates a price difference. Everybody gets the same offer. So much per day, so much per kilo. But the actual price you pay depends on the consumption. If you use a cylinder in 1 day, you pay $10, $25. If you use it only very small user in 100 days, you pay $35, 3.5 times more with the same scheme. And this barn cut, I don't know, do we have something similar in Holland? This barn cart, rail cart, costs €500. Why do I buy it? Because it gives me a 50% discount on all tickets for the duration of 1 year. I don't know why we haven't introduced that. We invented that actually for the Deutsche Bahn. Why we haven't introduced that in the Netherlands. Is there anybody from Simon Kutscher? You should talk to the Sporwegen to introduce that. What does that create? That creates an extreme price differentiation depending on how much you travel per year. If you travel a lot, your price, average price, is very low. Actually, the average discount is only 28%, but people are very happy. They buy the card once and then they get always 50%. And nobody knows where the break-even point is. That's, by the way, very difficult to calculate because we also have a Bahn card 25, which gives 25%, and we have a Bahn card 100, which costs €9,000. More than 6 million of these cards are sold per year. So that's a couple of billion which come only, and it's of course great. It's not only a pricing instrument, it's a great loyalty instrument. I know some people who buy this Bahn card 100 because they say, I want to force myself not to drive the car, but to use the train, because the marginal cost is, for the Bahn card 100, is 0. You can use all trains as many times as you want, as far as you go. It changes customer behavior. Here is a car and a different trick, bundling. You know that from Microsoft or from McDonald's, where you offer several products together at a discount. This was for BMW cars, various add-on features. And the profit plus was 21%, and it has also implications for the production, because people buy bundles. That's much easier to implement in the manufacturing line than having all the individual features configured. So, lesson 4, price differentiation, multidimensional, going from one dimension to several price dimensions, nonlinear pricing, as in the barn card case, bundling schemes, and behavioral pricing are extremely effective profit drivers. I don't have the time to expand on behavioral pricing, but just to give you one example. Think of a restaurant, and currently they have wine between 10 and 30 euros per bottle. Under this condition, the average price would probably be 17, 18. That's our experience. Somewhere in the middle, a little lower than the middle. Now, you introduce a bottle of 50. What happens? The average goes to 22. Nobody orders, or hardly anybody orders the 50 euro or dollar bottle, but more people order the $30 bottle. We call that, it's one of the many phenomena in behavioral pricing. We call it the magic of the middle. I have our old farmhouse, and I bought some logs recently. So I went into a do-it-yourself Baumarkt, and there were logs in this size between 4 and 12 euros. What did I buy? I bought one for 8. I have no idea what a log costs. If the price span had been between 4 and 16, I would probably have bought one for 10. 25% more. So understanding these intricacies is really, really very, very important. Now, the whole new digital pricing. I already talked, and Vern talked about dynamic pricing, which is probably the most important here. But here are a couple of others. I mentioned Socrates with the sharing economy. Pay-per-use is a very important new wave. An example from Michelin tires. I'm talking of truck and bus tires. Michelin introduced a tire which lasts 25% longer. Now the natural conclusion would be we charge 25% more. Go to a trucking company and tell them the new tire costs 1,250 instead of the 1,000 you are used. He says, you are crazy. Nobody would buy the new tire at 1,250. So they switch to a new model. They charge per kilometer. That was accepted. They can charge 25% more. And it's even convenient for the trucking companies because they usually charge according to kilometers driven. So they already get the information which they can use in their own invoicing process. Freemium is a very, very tricky case because you don't make money unless you have advertising like Spotify for the premium version, but in LinkedIn or many others, you don't make any money from the freemium customers. So how do you get them to switch to the premium version? So the separation between the basic and the premium version is a very big problem. And most of the freemium companies have only about 8 or 10% paying customers. So 90% are. Now, if you upgrade the basic version, it's even getting more difficult because the added value of the premium version is less. Very, very tricky. Flat rates, also quite popular, but flat rates mostly profit-heavy users. Actually, flat rates are a subsidy which low users pay to heavy users. The heavy users save money, the low users pay too much. Vern was mentioning all this data, new world, and of course that is a very effective, promising base for individualized pricing. And that's also an old story. When you go to a bazaar in the Orient, what does the merchant do? He asks, which car do you drive? You say Mercedes, then your price is double. Where do you live? In Germany, you say in Munich, your price is 4 times. As if I say I drive a cheap car or whatever it is. So the merchant in the bazaar tries to assess your purchasing power, your willingness to pay. He flatters you, oh, you're a very important person. You can afford this, you need this prestigious product or whatever. And this is, of course, the same process we try to simulate in data. And Vern, I'm probably a bit less optimistic than you are. Personal experience. I have ordered hundreds of books from Amazon since 1996. Since 1996, I am a customer of Amazon and order lots there. I've never ordered a book which Amazon recommended to me. Strange. And I talked to the marketing boss of Zalando recently and said, I ordered some sneakers some time ago, and since then I'm getting advertising for sneakers. Am I the ideal customer and I just bought sneakers that I am buying again? There are some people who have dozens of pairs of sneakers. So understanding the customer from the data is a real challenge. And there the difference shows between a company who really masters this competence and others who, the Zalando guy, and that's a 20 billion euro company, they said, we are really not good at that. We are still not good at that. Gamification, that's another very interesting. And here I have a hot example, TOC. Has anybody heard of TOC? Probably not. What is TOC? Have you ordered one? No. TOC is a new electric car coming from Turkey, of all places. And their first idea, which was not realized due to the earthquakes, was to introduce an NFT, a non-fungible token, numbered, tradable, etc., which is a call option, something like a Kaufoption for a new car. So they did it now with a somewhat simplified lottery, because with the earthquake, everything was in chaos in Turkey. And 180,000 people registered for that lottery, which was run on the TV in Turkey, and 20,000 were selected. And they all had to pay 3,000, the value of 3,000 euros, and Tesla has done a similar thing. Actually, it's no risk, because if they buy a car, they get 3,000 at discount, and if they don't buy a car, they get the money back. But it was a hype, a crazy, and they have now 120,000 orders for this new car, which will be introduced later this year. Through this gamification, it's like collection or whatever it is. Everybody wanted to be one of the top 20,000 and gets a number. A very important aspect, often not well understood, in digitalization and pricing is the role of marginal cost. We come back in a few minutes on the profitability of the tech companies. And that has to do a lot with marginal costs, because you gave Facebook, their marginal costs are 0 of creating content. We do it for them. And the marginal cost of adding an additional customer for a purely digital company is also 0. That's new in history. We have had very few products in history, some pharmaceutical products, where the main cost is in the research and development, and the production as such is low. But marginal cost of 0 is a fascinating phenomenon, because it makes a lower price threshold 0. Even if you sell at a very low price, in large volumes, you can make huge profits. One important aspect here is sensors and data. You cannot implement the Michelin tire system by measuring or going to the trucking company and recording the kilometers driven manually. You need sensors. For the Enercon, with the entrepreneurial pricing, you need sensors. So using the potential of sensors to create data and use them for pricing. And then, of course, new artificial intelligence. And I did a little joke here. I asked ChatGPT, I developed an electric car, that's by the way true, which has double the range of a Tesla. The price of the Tesla is $40,000. How much more could I charge? So I actually developed this car, and I'm now interested in what ChatGPT's answer, if your electric car has double the range of a Tesla and is priced at $40,000, it's likely that your product is highly innovative and it has a significant competitive advantage over the electric cars in the market, and so on. This would put your electric car in the price range of $60,000 to $80,000. That's a little naive, but imagine what this program does. It gives me advice, it understands the value, then does it a little too linearly, but we can imagine when these systems become smarter that they can really help us. Hopefully not replace Simon Kucher. We are a little still more differentiated, and it's just a joke, but it shows the potential. Lesson 5. Digitalization and the internet have led to a large variety of new pricing models, and they only touched many, many others. Artificial intelligence will add another layer of innovations. We have no idea where this will lead us, but we have to stay on the front. Now, let's come to profit. Profit is the ultimate result, and pricing, as we have seen in the original formula, is directly related to profit, is the most effective profit driver. Now, what is the profit of companies? I have one book, True Profit, and I asked, personally, I did it in Germany, but there are also other studies, similar studies in the US and Italy. People in the street think that the net profit margin is 22%, probably similar for Holland. USA even 31%, the Italians are the record holder. People in the street think that the net margin is 38%. The reality, 3.3 in Germany, 4.9 in. So people overestimate profits by a factor of 6 to 7. I have no idea, no explanation why. Obviously, people know nothing about the economy. And these are also your employees. They are the people who I met in the street. Now, here a comparison across countries. Always net profit. I call that true profit. Only net profit is true profit. You see the average across countries is 5.7% relative to revenue. The Netherlands is a little lower. Germany is very low, by the way. And Japan is a record holder. And some countries like Brazil, India are actually quite high, but these are high-risk countries. Switzerland is also high, but that's partially due to the low taxes, because these are profit after taxes. We see huge profit differences across industries. From pharmaceutical biotech, more than 20%, to automotive, 7.4%. And this doesn't include yet retailers, where we have a different world. This is for retail and e-commerce. Food retail, usually below 3%. Even some are closer to, many are close to 1%. Special retailers, even if they have low prices like IKEA, Zara, H&M, Uniqlo, have much higher margins. Interesting. You would think that these are low profit, low margin companies, but they have very efficient system, low costs. And Aldi, I don't show here, Aldi is also at about 3% in spite of the lower prices. That comes from the cost efficiencies. Now, what is the situation in e-commerce? Here I have Amazon, Zalando, Alibaba and bol.com, which is very strong in the Netherlands. Here we see that Zalando and bol.com, which are real e-commerce companies, have about the same as the retailers. How comes that Amazon is that high? That is, of course, Amazon Web Services. The digital business, Amazon e-commerce practically makes no profit. All the profit of Amazon comes from AWS. And Alibaba is also a pure digital company. They don't do the logistics. It's like eBay, the system. So this already points into the direction digital, low costs, marginal costs are a profit driver. And then if we look at the tech companies, it's crazy. These are the data for 21, 22, we don't have a full picture yet. Over 25% net margin. Are you aware of that? And that is combined with a huge size. The revenue of Apple is about 370 billions of dollars. And apply that percentage. Google alone makes 208 billion from advertising, from the advertising machine. 208 billion. There's no company in Holland which makes 208 billion in revenue, and in Germany it's only Volkswagen, I think, or maybe Mercedes. Crazy. Why is that so? If we go back to the profit formula, price is extremely high relative to the costs. Volume, extremely high. They have billions of customers, and costs are low. So all three profit drivers are in a very, very specific constellation for the tech companies. My conclusion, by the way, and you can take that as a prediction, these companies will be busted, separated. That cannot go on like this, because that translates into market capitalization. Apple alone has a higher value than the 40 DAX companies together in Germany, the 40 largest public companies. And this is not tenable in the longer term. If we look at the big picture for the world, the best 10% of superstars, of profit superstars, harvest 80% of the global economic profit. Economic profit is a profit beyond capital cost. And 1%, so these are the apples and the guys I showed you, harvest 36% of the global economic. We never had in history such a concentration of the profits in a few sectors. Besides tech, it's banking, especially American banks, and energy in the recent years, of course. And the worst 10%, if you invested, they annihilate the same value as these superstars create, and the gap is increasing. Lesson 6, the profit differences between countries, industries, and companies are huge. This points to the fact that some companies are getting it right and others are getting it wrong. So there's a real chance that within your industry, you can be a profit leader or a loser. Even within industries, we see huge differences. So it's not only industry-driven. It depends largely, ultimately, on you. Now, a short view at the profit killers. What are the main profit killers? Wrong goals, price wars, overcapacities, wrong incentives, or empty core industry. Empty core industry is an industry where you cannot make money. Airlines is an empty core industry. In the more than 100 years of their history, airlines have not made a profit if you accumulate. This does not include that individual airlines like Ryanair or Southwest Airlines, that they are profitable, but the industry as such doesn't make a profit. Here from our global studies, only 28% of companies say they are truly profit-oriented. Half are volume-oriented. For instance, Volkswagen is a good case. They had for years the ambition to overtake Toyota in the number of cars. They achieved that in 2017, 18, 19. Now Toyota is again ahead, but their profit was only half of the Toyota profit, the margin, and also the market capitalization. So what sense does that make? Price wars, very effective profit killers. 59% of the companies say they are engaged in price wars. The highest number was in Japan, 86%. You remember, Japan was the country with the lowest profitability, and that comes largely from this price war samurai mentality. Lesson 7, elimination of profit killers can be a quick and very effective way to profit improvement. So it's not always the sophisticated science with differentiation, but it can also be eliminating profit killers. This especially applies to price wars and overcapacities, since they are the most dangerous profit killers. If you have overcapacity in your industry, it's almost a hopeless case. My last point, inflation. Only shortly on this issue. The essence of inflation is not that products are getting more expensive. The essence is that money loses its value. And again, an example from history. If you take a different currency, namely gold, for an ounce of gold, you could buy a custom-made tunica in Rome 2,000 years ago. For an ounce of gold, you can buy a custom-made suit today. So the product has not lost its value. The money, our fiat money, the printed money, is losing its value. And that means it's like perishable fruit. You have to get it as early as possible and get rid of it as soon as possible, because it's perishing. Simple passing the cost through in the price is naive, because you neglect the willingness to pay. Agility and pricing power are becoming decisive. If costs change all the time, every week, you have to be very agile to change your prices, to adjust, to implement the necessary change. As then shift to value communication. We said that value is a decisive factor. If you want to increase prices, you can only do it if the customer perceives a higher value and is willing to pay more. And then hardening of the sales force. It's not only a matter of knowledge, value communication, but also of psychological hardening through role plays, videos. I said for the paper manufacturer that even the toughest, most experienced salesmen are close to burnout and breakdown. Digitalization under inflation is a double-edged sword. Why? Because digitalization increases price transparency tremendously. So if you think of booking.com, etc., but you can also use digitalization for value communication. So it's a big challenge. My last lesson, the core of inflation is the devaluation of money, not the price increases of goods. You must understand that. It's typically not optimal to pass through the full cost increases. Inflation challenges all business functions, not just sales. Also, purchasing is, of course, directly effective. So cultural changes indicated. That is the role of the CEO. Last word, 1 minute, on Simon Kutscher. You mentioned us already. We are the global leader in pricing. This is our development. That's also a little scale-up story. We have over 2,000 people now. Last year, our revenue was 535 million euros. And we are on our way to being global, 47 offices in 30 countries. Of course, we have one in Amsterdam with a rather large team of almost 50 people. So, thank you very much for your attention. Summary, we have seen more changes in pricing in 20 than in 2,000 years before. Price is and remains the most effective profit driver. The profit multiplier of price is 10. For cost, it's 6. For volume, only 4. Volume equals pretium equals price is the fundamental equation of pricing. Differentiation is the higher art. So go away from one price to many prices, multidimensional, whatever it is. Digitalization and artificial intelligence will bring further radical changes in pricing. Eliminating profit killers is an effective route to profit improvement. Profit differentials across countries, sectors, companies are huge, and inflation challenges all functions, all companies, requires a culture change. I have a couple of books on this, and I have actually 3 books for 3 people here.
But before we go there,
we can distribute them afterwards.
We will.
I finished 5 minutes before,
and that's
as
perfect.
Requested.
And so
that's
it's
what we
perfect on
expect
time
from a German.
And on the clock, and this is why you make such beautiful cars. So we have 5 minutes for questions. I want to mention one thing, and I want to start with the first question. And then if anybody else has a question, raise your arm, and one of our staff will come to you. The first thing is indeed, you mentioned earlier in the presentation that the attitude of leadership about the price needs to change.
Yeah.
So that is that if you think you are expensive, then the client will also think you're expensive. And I think that's a very important psychological item.
We actually investigated this issue in one of our studies, and if the CEO supports and takes care of pricing, the average margin is 4% higher. So we asked, does the CEO, is that a concern, an issue? Does CEO support sales, pricing? And it was significantly higher. So it's exactly the point you make. And I mean, that's another point. I observe so often people discuss hours, days about the advertising message or whatever, and Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock say, oh, we still have to decide on the price for a new product. So the price is the most effective profit driver and the most neglected one.
Okay, I think that message came across. There's no short answers, I understand it, but we all deal with clients that want to have a discount. We make a price and they come back. And either it's the purchasing department or they want to have a discount. How do we deal with clients that want to have the same for cheaper?
Now there I can only refer, it's a separate lecture to my very thick book, Price Management, 600 pages. Of course, that depends on so many factors. For instance, there are people who buy on discount. They buy something because they get a discount. That's, for instance, in China, very important. So you raise the list price in order to be able to give a bigger discount. More rational, more sober people are interested in the price. They actually price. There's a discount as such doesn't count. So this goes more into behavior. I mean, you have the craziest things. You have in the US, cashback for cars is very popular. So you buy a car, list price 30,000, you pay 30,000, you give your check or transfer the money, and you get 2,000 back in cash. Why is it so effective? Many Americans never have cash in their hands. That's the only opportunity. Okay. They get $2,000 cash.
Crazy. There was a question over there.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Simon, for that very content-driven talk. I had a lot of value, so I'm very happy about the price I paid for this conference now. I'm CEO of a software company. We work for other businesses, and we've seen a factor in pricing acceptance that you haven't mentioned, and that's the position of people within the company who have to make the decision. So if we communicate a price increase to somebody who's lower in the organization, they will much more readily accept the price increase than if we communicate it to the owner of the company. So it seems that the preparedness to pay more is linked to how much the person feels the money as being his own. And I'm curious if you have any suggestions on how we can improve our pricing strategy based on this observation.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah,
maximum.
that ultimately leads to the question how you organize the pricing function. That's another very complex issue. Where are decisions made, and also how do you communicate? And so there is no general answer to that. Was that short enough? But I have a whole chapter on the organization of the pricing function in this book, Price Management. Very complex. One reason for the complexity is that you have to involve both financial people, salespeople, marketing people. So it's not a decision which one function or one person can make.
I think in terms of time, that was the last and final question. And I really, Dr. Simon, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come from Germany, to come here to join us. We're going to have a quick lunch, I think, with Vern together. But thank you so much. You taught us a lot. And the rest we can find in the books.
Yeah.
Are they on sale somewhere?
Yeah, of course, you get them on Amazon. But these are special examples with personal dedication. Something is certain here for Michael Muller. Where's Michael Muller?
He's coming this afternoon.
Yeah, so you give it to him.
Yes.
Confessions of the Pricing Man for Bas Wilward. Bas, come up. And True Profit is for Ali Nickman.
Ali Nickman is of Bunk. He's
yeah,
not
okay,
here
you
yet.
also.
Okay.
Bas, that's for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Read it.
Can I have a big hand? Thank you very much, Dr. Simon.